One of my favorite NFL players over the past decade or so has been Andre Johnson of the Houston Texans. At a time in an era where you had these kind of diva, look at me wide receivers that were very caught up, it seems like, on their own douchebaggery, like Terrell Owens and Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, whatever the hell. Andre Johnson, to me, in many ways, was the antithesis of that. Here was a guy that wasn't a look at me, me first type of player. This was a guy that played hard, kept his nose to the grindstone, kept his mouth shut, and was about the team and always showed up even for some of these really bad Houston Texans teams. When I looked at Andre Johnson, I saw the epitome of a franchise player. To me, I saw the face of a franchise. And you're talking about the third overall pick out of the U in 2003. A guy that is beyond question the greatest player, at least for the time being, until maybe J.J. Watt surpasses him someday. But for the time being, is the greatest and most significant and important player in that organization's history. And for my money, a future inductee into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. If I had my druthers and if I had a vote, I would most definitely be voting for Andre Johnson. But like I said, again, this is a guy that I've had a tremendous amount of respect for over the years, that I've enjoyed watching play, that I've been an incredibly big fan of because of the way, in large part, that he's conducted and carried himself and been able to be such a dominant, consistent force in the league, similar to a Larry Fitzgerald in Arizona with the Cardinals, in spite of the fact that throughout the majority of his career, just like with Fitzgerald, he suffered from atrocious to bad to mediocre quarterback play and a lack of overall help around him. Often toiling in the mediocrity of his team and still shining above that, still excelling, still showing through his true greatness. So I guess it shouldn't be all that surprising to me that all good things must come to an end. And the fact of the matter is, in today's NFL climate, it's a modern NFL reality. Based off of the current salary system that is in place, it's almost demanding of this, that even the best can be cast aside. Even the biggest and most important and best player in the history of your organization, a guy that has devoted 12 years of his life and 12 Hall of Fame years of his career to your organization, can be cast aside like nothing. The news breaking yesterday that the Houston Texans are looking to either trade or release Andre Johnson. You know, I understand. And maybe, like I said, because of the NFL climate today, this was going to happen. It was bound to happen. It's the fact that Andre Johnson wants to get paid more than he's probably worth at this point in time, but at the same point in time feels like he should be paid like the most important player and the best player in the history of the organization, because he has been. He has been a guy that has meant a lot to that organization. For all those years that the Houston Texans sucked to high hell before you got other players in the fold like Arian Foster or, let's say, a J.J. Watt, Andre Johnson was it. Andre Johnson was the only reason to take the Houston Texans seriously. He was the only reason to care about the Houston Texans. I can understand why he doesn't want to take a pay cut, and I can understand why he believes that he should be compensated in a certain way. And I also understand, based off of the modern NFL reality and the current salary climate, that the Houston Texans don't want to pay him. All parties involved are to blame for this type of crap happening, for the ridiculousness of the structure of NFL contracts, where it's all about guaranteed money, and at some point in time down the road, at the tail end of those deals, you get such a ridiculous cap figure that you have no choice but to either restructure and or release the player. It creates situations and ridiculous situations like this. What a shame it is that the greatest player in this organization's history can't finish his career with that team if he wants to play in 2015. That's a shame. And it seems like to me that the Houston Texans are almost kind of chomping at the bit for this. And they can't wait for this. And maybe they've grown a little tired of Andre Johnson. And maybe they've been worn out a little bit by his act. And I don't really know what that act is. Maybe it's just the fact that Andre Johnson's tired of the fact for over a decade he's wasted his career on a crappy team for a crappy organization. Now keep in mind, This is the same Houston Texans organization whose first ever draft pick was David freaking Carr. David Carr! Who in 2004 to 2006 devoted several first-round picks to defensive linemen because they just had to stop Peyton Manning, and most of them busted out. And the reason they took Mario Williams #1 overall in 2006 was not because he was the best player on their board. They even so much as admitted that. It was because he was going to be the easiest to sign. That's the type of Mickey Mouse bullshit operation the Houston Texans organization has largely been over their 13 seasons of existence. This is the same Houston Texans organization that took 9 years to get to the playoffs, that decided in the 2014 draft to pass on a real deal 3-4 outside linebacker and a better overall football player in Khalil Mack to take an inferior prospect who wasn't quite the schematic fit in Jadeveon Clowney. This is the same organization in this 2014 draft this past year that not once but twice decided to pass up on taking Teddy Bridgewater. They decided they didn't want to have him at #1 overall because their cocks got so hard for Clowney, and then coming around at the tail end of round 1 where they could have easily traded up from pick number 33 to move up a few picks to ensure that they got a franchise quarterback for the next decade, something they've never really truly had. See David Carr, see Matt Schaub. They decided, nah, dog, we're good. We're going to wait until round 4 to address that position with a 25-year-old guy in Tom Savage from Pittsburgh. And we're going to let freaking Ryan Fitzpatrick be our starter all year long. This is the ridiculousness and the stupidity of the Houston Texans organization. 2 playoff appearances in their 13-year history. Just think about that for a second. 2 playoff appearances in 13 seasons. Why? Because of bullshit like that. Failing multiple times to pick Teddy Bridgewater, deciding to take Jadeveon Clowney, an inferior prospect who was less of a schematic fit, over a guy who was a better overall prospect for my money in my mind at that time, and a much better schematic fit in Khalil Mack. This is the Houston Texans team that's been itching to get rid of Andre Johnson, waiting for their time, biding their time, waiting for an excuse and a reason to be able to do so. Why? Because the Houston Texans are stupid. You couldn't find a way to work this out? Why are you chomping at the bit so badly to get rid of Andre Johnson? Is it because you want to stand behind Bill O'Brien? Is it because you believe in Bill O'Brien? The same Bill O'Brien who was perfectly fine with Ryan Fitzpatrick being your starter last year? The same Bill O'Brien who, along with Rick Smith, was part of the decision-making process that decided to pass on guys like Teddy Bridgewater and Derek Carr, to wait until the 4th round to take a guy like Tom Savage, who was already 25 years old. This Houston Texans team, huh? That figures. That's pretty much par for the course for them. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is, again, part of the NFL reality that stuff like this, shit like this has to happen. But it's still a shame that it has to happen. And it's incredibly frustrating, I think, for all parties involved. But I wouldn't expect anything less out of this phony baloney, ham and egger Houston Texans organization. So what's next for Andre Johnson? As far as I'm concerned, the place that he should go is right in that same division, the Indianapolis Colts. One thing Andre Johnson deserves to have a chance to play for is a fucking world championship. He deserves the chance to play in a Super Bowl, to play for a Super Bowl title. And for him, based off of the way I see it, the best way he can both exact revenge on the Houston Texans organization twice a year and get his best shot at going to a Super Bowl sometime in the next year or two would be with the Indianapolis Colts. Some people might sit there and say, well, he can go to the New England Patriots or he can go here or go there. The Colts have a lot more cap space. They can pay him a lot more, pay him like a big star receiver that he is to at least somewhat of a certain degree, and he still has the chance again to rub it in the Texans' faces twice a year. I want to see Andre Johnson go somewhere where they appreciate him. I want Andre Johnson to go somewhere where they understand what he can bring to the table. I want to see Andre Johnson go somewhere to an organization that actually cares about winning, is committed to winning, and actually wants to win. The truth of the matter is, for all these years, the Houston Texans haven't deserved Andre Johnson. And sadly for Andre Johnson, he hasn't deserved what the Houston Texans gave to him. So they gave him a lot of money, but they wasted a lot of prime peak years of his Hall of Fame career. So I hope now at the tail end of his career, he's able to go get what he wants at a place where he wants, rub it in the Texans' faces, and hopefully earn himself a Super Bowl ring because, by God, he deserves it. It's just a shame that it had to happen like this.